The world's ocean remains to this day the most vast and least explored museum on the planet, preserving thousands of pieces of evidence from human history. Despite advances in satellite navigation and deep-water technology, objects of value and significance far beyond ordinary discoveries still rest on the seafloor. There exists a short list of 5 sunken ships that have been officially recognized as the most wanted vessels on Earth. For centuries, rulers of powerful empires, scientific expeditions, and major private corporations have tried to locate them. But the majority of those attempts ended in complete failure. Enormous stretches of the ocean floor have been mapped far less thoroughly than the surface of the moon, allowing the sea to hide the traces of massive catastrophes for decades beneath layers of silt and sand. These 5 ships have become genuine legends, and the discovery of any one of them would be the greatest scientific sensation of the century. Right now we are going to examine these mysterious cases and learn exactly what details keep driving researchers back into the abyss in search of what is considered forever lost. The story of the ship known as the Merchant Royal begins with extraordinary luck that quickly turned into a genuine nightmare. In September of 1641, this English vessel was returning from a lengthy voyage to Cadiz, where it had taken on a cargo capable of making any ruler dizzy with desire. The Spanish had hired Captain John Limray to transport pay to their soldiers in Flanders, since their own galleons were constantly being attacked. Loaded into the merchant's hold were no fewer than 100,000 pounds of gold, hundreds of heavy silver ingots, and dozens of boxes filled with precious stones and pearls. By the most conservative estimates of historians, that treasure would be worth more than $1.5 billion today. The ship was so overloaded with precious metal that its draft became critical, and the hull creaked with every turn of the wheel. Captain Limray was in a hurry to get home to London, counting on enormous commissions from the deal, but the sea had other plans. When the vessel approached the shores of Cornwall, the weather began deteriorating rapidly, and the aging hull could not withstand the strain. Through the dried-out seams, water began flooding the holds, and the sailors could not pump it out fast enough with their hand pumps. Exhausted men worked at the edge of their endurance for several days straight, but the water level only kept rising, swamping the precious chests. The situation became critical 30 miles from Land's End, when it became clear that the heavy gold was pulling the ship to the bottom faster than it could be saved. Nearby sailed another English ship, the Mayflower, which attempted to come alongside for a transfer of the cargo, but the storm made it impossible to do so safely. The sailors watched as waves rolled across the deck on which lay riches capable of buying half of Britain. At some point the captain realized he had to choose between the gold and the lives of 50 crew members. The crew was forced to hurriedly abandon the sinking vessel in lifeboats while the Merchant Royal slowly slipped beneath the waves, stern first. John Limray left the ship as one of the last, watching from the deck of another vessel as his dream of wealth disappeared into the deep. The ship sank very rapidly and almost vertically, which created ideal conditions for the cargo to remain in a single location. The next morning the surface of the sea was perfectly calm, and only a few wooden splinters recalled the catastrophe. The English crown was in shock at the loss of such a sum, since that money could have influenced the outcome of the approaching civil war. The search began almost immediately, but the technology of the 17th century did not allow divers to descend beyond 100 meters. Today the Merchant Royal is called the Golden Eldorado of the English Channel, and the hunt for it has turned into a genuine fever. The problem is that the area of the wreck is known only approximately, and the seabed in these waters is covered with powerful currents and rocky outcroppings. Many adventurers have spent entire fortunes on the rental of sonar equipment and deep-water cameras, but the sea seems to be playing hide-and-seek with them. Sometimes fishermen haul up ancient anchors or scraps of rope in their nets, giving false hope of the treasure's proximity. In 2019 one search team discovered a massive anchor weighing several tons that by all indications belonged to the merchant itself. That discovery caused a genuine sensation in the press and attracted new investors ready to pour millions into modern equipment. However, over the course of more than 380 years the landscape of the seabed has changed dramatically, and the heavy gold cargo may simply have fallen into crevices or been buried under a thick layer of sand. The ocean has locked this treasure in the place that sailors call Land's End and guards it with treacherous tides. Every new expedition confronts near-zero visibility at depth, and debris from modern vessels confuses the sensors. Some researchers believe in the curse of this gold, since many who came close to solving the mystery suddenly encountered equipment failures or financial ruin. Nevertheless, a prize of $1.5 billion keeps sending people back out to sea. The Merchant Royal remains the most desired prize for any diver, since a single recovered ingot could set a person up for life. The suspense continues, and perhaps the next leap forward in robotics will finally bring to the surface what was once intended to pay entire armies. Next on our list is the Portuguese giant known as the Flor de la Mar, which translates as the flower of the sea. This ship was rightly considered one of the most beautiful and simultaneously most ill-fated vessels of its era. Built in Lisbon in the early 16th century, it was enormous for its time, displacing more than 400 tons and featuring a very high deck that made it resemble a floating fortress. However, that design came with a serious drawback. The vessel was extremely unstable in strong winds and shipped water over its sides. Despite its technical deficiencies, the Flower of the Sea faithfully served the Portuguese crown for 9 years, participating in the conquest of new colonies in the east. Its final assignment was the campaign against the wealthy city of Malacca, which at the time was the main trading hub of Asia. After capturing the city, the Portuguese packed the ship's holds with riches that Europe had never seen in all its history. There were hundreds of heavy forged chests filled to the brim with gold dust, ingots, and precious stones seized from the Sultan's palace. In addition to the gold, the ship was loaded with priceless gifts from the King of Siam, including life-size statues of pure gold with eyes made of enormous rubies. According to documents of the period, this cargo was the most valuable ever carried by Portuguese sailors. In late November of 1511, Admiral Afonso de Albuquerque gave the order to weigh anchor and set course for India. The route lay through the Strait of Malacca, which even today is considered one of the most dangerous passages for navigation because of its narrow channels and unpredictable currents. The weather was calm at first, but that was merely the lull before the catastrophe awaiting the overloaded vessel off the shores of Sumatra. A terrible storm erupted in the night and caught the crew completely off guard, at the very moment the ship was passing near sharp reefs. Enormous waves began pounding the high sides, and the Flower of the Sea, already known for its poor stability, became unmanageable. A powerful impact against the underwater rocks literally tore the hull in two, and freezing water instantly poured into the holds full of gold. The admiral managed to escape on a small raft, but nearly the entire crew and all the accumulated treasures went to the bottom within minutes. The site of the wreck was very close to shore, but the depth and the murky water churned up by the storm made any immediate recovery of the cargo impossible. Since that day the Flower of the Sea has become the primary target for treasure hunters from around the world, since the value of its contents is today estimated at more than $2 billion. The mystery of this shipwreck lies in the fact that the exact location of the vessel's loss remains the subject of fierce debate. The ocean in that region constantly reshapes the seabed, depositing enormous layers of sand and mud from rivers that drain into the sea. Many expeditions have attempted to find the remains of the hull using modern radar and sonar, only to discover the empty wreckage of other, more recent ships. On top of that, the political situation in the region greatly complicates the search, as Indonesia, Malaysia, and Portugal cannot agree on who exactly would own the treasure in the event of its discovery. This has created an atmosphere of secrecy around the ship, and some black market divers attempt to conduct searches illegally at the risk of their freedom. Local residents on the coast of Sumatra still tell legends that after heavy storms the sea occasionally washes old coins or small gold ornaments onto the beaches. This leads many to believe the ship lies very close, literally underfoot, simply hidden in thick silt. Treasure hunters spend entire fortunes on new attempts to find the Flower of the Sea, but the ocean seemingly refuses to surrender what it claimed 500 years ago. There is even a theory that the ship may have broken apart into even smaller pieces, and the golden statues of the Siamese kings are now scattered across a vast area of the ocean floor. This uncertainty only fans the interest, turning the story of the Portuguese flagship into one of the most tantalizing mysteries of the ocean. Everyone who sets out on the search hopes that their instruments will pick up the signal pointing to heaps of gold lying in the darkness beneath layers of sediment. Third place on our list belongs to perhaps the most famous ship in human history, one that even schoolchildren know. It is the Santa Maria, the flagship of Christopher Columbus, on which he made his great discovery of America. But few people remember that this legendary vessel never made it home, vanishing without a trace off the shores of the island of Hispaniola in the very midst of the first expedition. The tragedy occurred on Christmas Eve of 1492, when the sea was completely calm. Columbus, exhausted from the long crossing, decided to lie down and rest, handing the wheel to an experienced sailor. However, that man, breaking every rule, entrusted navigation to a cabin boy who had never before steered a ship in these treacherous waters. The boy failed to notice that a gentle current was slowly carrying the enormous wooden vessel straight onto a coral reef. The impact was soft but fatal. The Santa Maria simply ran firmly aground, and all attempts to refloat her proved useless. Columbus in his fury ordered the mast cut down to lighten the ship, but the hull had already cracked and water began slowly filling the holds. Realizing the flagship was doomed, the admiral ordered all valuables and provisions transferred ashore. From the wreckage of the ship itself the sailors constructed a small fortification they named La Navidad, which became the first European settlement in the New World. It would seem the location of the wreck should have been well known, since it sat right before the eyes of the first colonists. But when Columbus returned a year later with his second expedition, he found the fort burned and all the men dead. From that moment the traces of the Santa Maria herself were lost in the sands and corals for 5 long centuries. The mystery of this ship's disappearance is considered one of the most frustrating in the eyes of historians, since finding it would mean touching an object of global significance. In 2014 a sensational news story swept the world. Renowned explorer Barry Clifford announced that he had found the remains of the Santa Maria. He had discovered a pile of stones used as ballast on ships of that era, and even an old cannon sticking up from the sand. Clifford was so confident in his claim that he held a press conference and announced the greatest discovery of the century. But the joy was short-lived. An international commission conducted an examination and determined that the cannon dated to a considerably later period. The researcher had been wrong, and the real Santa Maria remained lying somewhere else beneath a layer of marine sediment. The problem with searching in this area is that the coastline of Haiti has changed dramatically over the past 500 years. Where deep water once existed, there may now be mangrove forests or land buried under river silt. The ocean here is very much alive. Coral grows quickly and is capable of completely engulfing the wooden skeleton of a ship in just a couple of decades. Moreover, wood in warm tropical water is rapidly destroyed by shipworms, leaving behind only metal fittings and ballast stones. Many antiquity hunters believe that beneath the layer of sand it may still be possible to find the personal belongings of the crew or even the ship's log, which would shed light on Columbus's true intentions. The intrigue surrounding this vessel is further heightened by the fact that the Santa Maria was not merely a ship but a genuine symbol of a new era. The search for it has turned into a competition between scholars and private companies using satellite imagery and magnetic sensors to scan the seafloor. Yet the ocean seems to mock the searchers, feeding them the wreckage of other ships that perished in this area in great numbers in later centuries. Searching for the Santa Maria is like looking for a needle in a haystack where every find turns out to be another mistake. It remains unclear whether anything at all survives from the flagship, or whether it has forever turned to dust and become part of the Caribbean shore. But as long as there remains even one chance of finding a genuine nail or a piece of planking from this ship, people will keep searching, hoping to make history. The fourth story takes us from the salty oceans to the cold fresh waters of North America, where one of the strangest mysteries in the history of navigation lies hidden. A ship known as Le Griffon, or simply the Griffon, became the first large sailing vessel to venture into the waters of the Great Lakes in 1679. It was built by the French explorer La Salle, who dreamed of finding a short route to China through a network of immense inland seas. The Griffon was a genuine marvel for those parts. It had 2 masts and powerful sides decorated with the image of a mythical creature bearing the head of an eagle and the body of a lion. The local indigenous people watched this floating house sailing across the water with enormous distrust and fear, predicting its swift destruction. In September of that same year, La Salle sent the vessel back on the return journey from Green Bay, loaded to the brim with the most valuable beaver pelts and other animal furs. On board were 6 experienced sailors who were to deliver the cargo to the fort in order to pay off the expedition's enormous debts. The explorer himself remained ashore, watching as his white sails disappeared beyond the horizon of Lake Michigan. That was the last time the Griffon was seen alive. After that, not a single reliable piece of news about the fate of the ship or its crew was ever received. Almost immediately after its departure, a powerful storm erupted on the lake which, according to eyewitnesses on shore, could easily have capsized even such a sturdy vessel. Yet the mystery lies in the fact that after the storm the search parties found not a single fragment, not one barrel or scrap of cloth, the kind of wreckage that is almost always washed ashore after a shipwreck. The ship seemed to simply dissolve into thin air together with its entire crew and the valuable furs, which at that time were worth a small fortune. La Salle believed until the end of his life that he had been betrayed and that the sailors had simply stolen the ship, fled to the Indians or resold the cargo to other traders, and then sunk the vessel. There are also darker theories that are still debated by lovers of mysteries today. Some accounts say the Griffon was caught in a strange anomaly, of which the Great Lakes hold no fewer than the Bermuda Triangle. Local legends speak of a ghost ship that is sometimes seen in thick fog, silently gliding across the water with tattered sails and disappearing the instant anyone tries to approach. Over the last 100 years, hundreds of people have claimed to have finally found the remains of the legendary vessel on the bottom of Lake Michigan or Lake Huron. The hunt for the Griffon has turned into a kind of sport, where every found piece of old oak is declared to be part of the original flagship. But each time a thorough examination reveals these to be the wreckage of other ships, of which several thousand have sunk in these waters over the centuries. The lake gives up its secrets very reluctantly, and the icy fresh water can preserve wood so well that it may look brand new even after centuries. In 2014, 2 treasure hunters from Michigan discovered a strange wooden post sticking up from the bottom silt in the very area where the Griffon disappeared. They were convinced it was the top of a mast and even launched a legal battle with the state for ownership rights to the find. But when underwater archaeologists cleared the object of sand, it turned out to be nothing more than an old beam from a demolished 19th-century pier. That case became yet another reminder of how treacherous the search in these waters can be. The hunt for the Griffon continues today. Enthusiasts equipped with powerful magnetic scanners and drones are combing through square after square of the lakebed. The problem is that the bottom is covered with enormous quantities of iron debris from more modern disasters, creating constant interference for the instruments. The intrigue persists because if the Griffon is ever found intact, it would be the most important archaeological discovery in the history of the region. In its holds there may have been preserved not only furs long since turned to dust, but also unique tools, personal belongings of the first explorers, and possibly the answer to what exactly happened on board on that fateful night. Was it a navigation error, a mutiny, or something that defies logical explanation? We will only know when the lake decides to reveal its greatest secret. For now the Griffon remains a ghost, beckoning those who believe in the existence of lost treasures in the very heart of the continent. Every new summer dozens of boats set out on the lakes, their crews staring at sonar screens hoping to make out the outline of that very Griffon on the bow of the old French ship. Completing our list is the story of the Portuguese galleon known as the Cinco Chagas, whose name translates as the 5 Wounds. In 1594 this enormous ship was returning from the Indian city of Goa, loaded so tightly that sailors had difficulty moving about the decks. In its holds lay not only the usual spices and expensive fabrics but also an incredible quantity of gold and diamonds that Portuguese noblemen were bringing home. It is believed to have been one of the richest ships of its era, and its value today is almost impossible to imagine. However, the road home led through the dangerous waters of the Atlantic, where English pirates and privateers operated freely at that time. Near the Azores Islands, when just a short distance remained to the home shore, the Cinco Chagas encountered 3 English warships that had organized a genuine hunt for it. The battle was fierce and lasted nearly an entire day. English cannonballs tore through the wooden sides and fires broke out on the decks. The Portuguese fought desperately, knowing that surrender meant the loss of all their riches and their freedom. In the heat of battle the fire reached the powder magazine, and an explosion of such force occurred that it could be heard for many miles around. The enormous galleon sank as a result of the massive powder blast in the middle of the ocean. Eyewitnesses described how chests of gold and precious stones flew into the air along with splinters of wood, only to vanish instantly into the dark water. For most of the crew that catastrophe proved fatal, and the few who survived could only watch as their fortune descended to a depth of more than 2,000 meters. From that moment the Cinco Chagas became a legend that cannot be forgotten because of the staggering value of its cargo. The chief mystery of this shipwreck lies in its incredible depth, which makes any search attempt a genuine ordeal. Unlike other vessels that rest in shallow water, the Five Wounds lies in a place where water pressure would crush an ordinary submersible like a tin can. The ocean floor in the vicinity of the Azores is very uneven, full of underwater mountains and deep canyons where wreckage may have been buried under silt for centuries. Many modern companies engaged in deep water recovery have spent years studying archives in Lisbon and London, trying to calculate the exact point of the explosion from entries in the logbooks of the English captains. But even knowing the approximate area, finding small gold ingots and scattered diamonds across such a vast expanse is practically impossible without the use of the most expensive underwater robots. The intrigue surrounding this ship is further intensified by the fact that in recent decades technology has made an enormous leap forward. Now people can peer into depths that once seemed completely unreachable. Every new expedition to the Azores sends shockwaves through the treasure market, since the discovery of the Five Wounds could shake the precious metals market to its foundations. Some researchers claim to have seen on their monitor screens strange geometric shapes on the seafloor that closely resemble cannons or the outline of an old hull. But every time deep water currents or sudden storms force the search teams to pack up their equipment and return to port empty-handed. The sea seems to have posted an invisible guard around this gold, keeping everyone away from its treasures. Today the Cinco Chagas remains a symbol of unimaginable wealth, forever hidden in the darkness of the eternal ocean cold. It is a story of how human greed and war turned mountains of gold into ordinary garbage on the seafloor. And although the chances of finding this treasure are extremely slim, adventure hunters continue to draw up plans and raise money for new dives. They believe that one day the powerful beam of an underwater vehicle's spotlight will pick out the gleam of Portuguese gold from the darkness, gold that has been waiting for its moment for more than 4 centuries. For now this ship remains one of the most valuable and mysterious objects on the ocean floor, reminding us of how easily the ocean takes what people spent decades accumulating. To summarize, the ocean remains the largest and most reliable safe on our planet, one that is extremely reluctant to return what it has taken. Each of these 5 stories reminds us that even the most modern technology and enormous sums of money cannot always overcome the elements and time. Behind every sunken ship lie not only tons of gold and rare gemstones but also unsolved human fates, the stories of people whose hopes for wealth and glory were cut short in an instant. These vessels continue to draw adventure seekers from around the world, pushing them to spend their lives studying old charts and searching for barely perceptible signals on the seafloor. Perhaps some of these mysteries will remain forever unsolved, transformed into beautiful legends passed down from generation to generation. But as long as humanity preserves its curiosity and its drive for discovery, new expeditions will keep sailing back out to sea. One day it may be possible to see in the light of a floodlamp the outline of a legendary ship believed to be forever lost. If you want to be the first to learn about what other treasures our planet is hiding and which ancient secrets are on the verge of being solved, be sure to subscribe to the channel.